This is Charlie Crimebuster. Tonight, James and I are going to be talking about the new Secret Service Director. And we're going to talk about what he had to say about what happened on that horrible, horrible day on July the 13th when someone attempted to take out the former president of the United States, Donald J. Trump. We're going to talk about that and a whole lot more on this Charlie Crime Talk session, what some people are calling the fastest minutes in podcasting.
The views and opinions expressed in this presentation are solely those of the individuals interviewed or participating and do not represent those of Charlie Crimebuster nor Peacemaker Network. All individuals described or mentioned in the presentation should be considered innocent until found guilty in a court of law. This presentation contains subject matter such as violence and graphic descriptions which may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener and viewer discretion is advised.
Well, hello and welcome. We're glad to have you a part of the Charlie Crime Train today. We always want to let folks know that if you like to reach out to us, you can reach out with a shout out at charliecrimebuster@gmail.com, charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. You can also help support us, right, James?
That's right, peacemakernetwork.com.
Peacemakernetwork.com. And if they want to get caught up on a lot of the episodes we have out there, where would they go?
charliecrimebuster.com.
Right. We always try to make those available in show notes so people can get to them right quickly. Well, James, we were going to go talk about the Rust trial, how that would come out, but something really happened this last week that I think was really especially interesting, and that is that the new acting head of the Secret Service actually appeared before a Senate committee, and we got a whole lot of more information about what happened on July the 13th that we did not have when we were discussing this last week.
Yeah, and in your podcast, you were talking about the new Secret Service Director. Tell us a little bit more about him.
Well, he's James Rowe Jr. His 25 year career with the Secret Service, but there's something really special about him, James. You know what that is?
No.
Started his law enforcement right here in the state of Florida.
Oh, he's seasoned well.
Yeah, he was actually with the West Palm Beach Police Department.
Wow.
In 1995.
That's
and
impressive.
Then after that, 1999, I believe it was, he joined the Secret Service. Actually, he was working with the National Security and as a law enforcement advisor, which makes sense since he was also a part of law enforcement coming into his career. From there, he just went right on up the chain. Actually was a part of the Presidential Protective Detail in 2004 to 2008. He was also there in New York, and he helped lead the Secret Service's response to 9/11. So he's got a lot of good things about him. And of course, he appeared before the committee, taking the place of Chittle, who was the former Secret Service director, and now he is the interim Secret Service director as of July the 23rd.
Have they made a decision if he's going to be the actual director, or?
I really don't know. I can't say that they have. You know, they're calling him interim. I imagine that he's probably got a good shot at it. You know, and based on how he handled himself, I think with before the Senate committee, I think he's got a really good opportunity for it.
Well, I think he did a real good showing based upon what you shared in the podcast, because I mean, it sounds like he's really got things together. He's a straightforward kind of guy, and I really feel like that he's going to be the next one. You know, he's in that position.
Well, he certainly did better than the former acting director.
Yeah, he did.
When she played that dodgeball with the Senate, you know, he actually got up and actually told the Senate some things about that day that they needed to hear about.
Yeah, I guess her legacy is going to be the slope roof issue, right?
Oh yeah, well, yeah. I bet you wish she had that one to take back, don't you?
Oh Lord, yeah. That's something hard to live down, you know.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
Well, you mentioned the director detractors.
Well,
I think I said that right.
Yeah, you know, they're always I think anybody that's successful has detractors. You know, there are certain people that don't like them to be successful, and there are always enemies that you make as you climb these ladders and these career situations. Right. But there are some people that are actually saying that they feel that he was a part of the fact that there wasn't quite the sufficient manpower there that day that there should be. Because I
Oh,
guess part of his administrative duties was watching the budget and all that sort of thing. And I have read that at one time he was responsible for cutting like 20% off of that. And although I mean they reversed that now, but there I'm sure that people are going to be asking the question. This was a terrible, terrible, terrible time for the Secret Service, and I guess people are going to say, "Well, what part did he have in it?"
mm-hmm.
He was high up in the echelon. He was in a place of leadership. So
Right,
I
right.
guess people are going to say, "Hey, what part did you have to do with that?" But yeah, I guess we'll have to wait and see how he comes through the years or through the coming years. And especially the coming decision about whether he'll stay as that director or not. I guess we have yet to see that.
Wow. Well, I know it was he did contribute quite a bit based upon the podcast. And for those of you that haven't listened to the podcast, go back and listen to the podcast. It's here on YouTube and it's also charliecrimebuster.com. So go back and listen to the podcast. And during the podcast, you asked the audience to take a moment and think about something with you. And what was that? You want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, I would love to do that, James. I said, hey, folks, let's just take a moment, because in all that we see there, and this is a serious black eye to the Secret Service, no doubt about that. But we have to remember that in 3 seconds after those shots were fired, after the first shot was fired, in 3 seconds, there were a lot of brave men and women on that stage putting their bodies before the protectee, in this case, former President Trump, and the sniper. And man, I think that people just need to think these are men and women who are willing to take a bullet
Mm-hmm.
and they may not even like the guy, or they may not like who they're protecting.
Right.
Whether it's Biden or whether it's Trump or whether it's Harris or whether it's anybody else. I mean,
Yeah.
whoever. They're not there to serve based on politics, and they're
Right.
not there to serve based on who they like and who they don't like. But think about this: these are men and women who are saying, "I will take the bullet for you." In other words, I may not go home to see my partner and husband, wife, spouse. I may not go home to see my children, but
Mm-hmm.
I will take that bullet in place of you so that you can still perform your role that you're supposed to perform. I just think that's pretty brave,
Yeah.
Even in law enforcement. I mean, I know, we put ourselves out there and we're certainly going to protect and we're going to serve, but it's not the same kind of thing because we're taught in the academy, one thing they teach you and they're very strong about is that they want you to be able to go home to your family that night. So they
Right.
teach you to protect yourself,
Right.
but these folks, they can't think of their own protection. They think of protecting the protectee,
Right.
and I think that's another level of sacrifice, and that's what I think about it. How you feel about it?
I'm just impressed the fact that they put their lives on the line to protect someone and they put their faith in their coworkers that are looking to remove the threat.
No, that's true too. Yeah, it's a team. It's a
It's a
team
team
effort,
effort.
as you
Yeah.
say. Yep, no doubt about that.
Yeah. I mean, that's the Secret Service, the men that, throw themselves at the protectee. They're to be, observed and appreciated. But at the same time, you have those that are up on the roof and
Yeah,
hanging out of windows and on cranes and in trees,
yeah.
looking for potential threats.
Yeah, we wish there was somebody on that roof anyhow, right?
We wish there was somebody on
Yeah,
the water
yeah,
tower.
yeah. All right, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah. But there were a couple of things that you said that you especially liked about the director's statement. What were those?
Well, the first thing I like, of course, he didn't have a very high level to have to reach to beat what happened when the former director talked to them. But what I did like about it was number one, he came right out and just said, "Hey, we really failed." I mean, he really admitted, and seemed to be vulnerable to say to this committee, I'm going to tell you the best I can the areas where we failed, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to tell you what we're going to do about what we failed. So the first thing I like is that there wasn't any beating around the bush. He was very straightforward and said, we dropped the ball. And the second thing I liked about it was that, unlike Chittle, he did not throw the local law enforcement partners under the bus.
Mm-hmm.
In
Mm-hmm.
fact, he took time to praise them and say, hey, these are our partners. We couldn't do this without them,
Right. Right.
where it appeared during the first session with a former one that they wanted to say, well, this was the local police department's responsibility. And he did not take that low road that I felt that they were trying to take to get out of the blame and to put it on the local law enforcement. So those are two things that I thought was especially very good about his statement.
I mean, you also mentioned something about cold feet. How did that play
Yeah.
into this past week's
Well,
podcast?
well, as you know, every week, James, we always share a crazy story, right?
Yeah.
And this was a crazy one indeed. I mean, I know that people probably do get cold feet when they're going on their first dates, and sometimes guys and gals when they get married to get cold feet. But the way that this particular crazy person took care of it is not the right way. I mean, she decided that she didn't want to have that first date, and she called the police and said that he was somebody that she had known for 2 years. He had stalked her, he had threatened her, he was going to hurt her, and she was pregnant with his child. But guess what, James? All of that was a lie.
Oh dear.
I mean,
Yeah.
she called the police on this guy because she decided she didn't want to go out with him. They met on a dating app, but then they started texting to each other. And so this poor guy comes for the first date. You can imagine he's already nervous, as most people are in their first dates. But then, then all of a sudden the police shows up and you're interrogated
Yeah.
because of what she said, and but finally she admitted, hey, no, he's not that guy. He didn't do all that. I just was afraid and wanted to turn down the date, but I thought that if I said these things, the police would show up and help me. But the
Yes.
problem with that, James, is that in itself is illegal, and she got in a whole heap of trouble for that,
At
making a
only
false
18 years of
claim.
age.
Yeah,
Yeah.
18 years of age. Yeah,
Yeah.
incredible.
Sad.
But
Sad.
that just shows that there's a new crazy out there, right?
That's right.
If you have a date you don't like, just call the police.
That's
Say
right.
that he's an axe murderer.
That's right. And for the
Hey, folks, I wouldn't try that at home because you're gonna get a heap of trouble if you do that, right?
that's right.
Yeah.
For those of you that don't know what we're talking about, go back and listen to this past week's podcast, and you can hear the Crazy Crook story right there on our last week's podcast. charliecrimebuster.com and also here on YouTube. Yeah, I was shocked. 18 years of age and you ruin your life.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Crazy. Yeah.
You stated that we had some clarification about the roof, where the shooter shot from, and like what kind of clarification did we get on that?
Well, as remember we were talking last week, we said the roof, the roof, the roof, and the more
Yeah.
the roof, because that seemed to be the course of it.
Right.
What I loved about his statement was that unlike the first, the former director who did not even bother to go to the site, he actually went to the site. He got right on the very roof that the shooter was on, and I'm really, I'm trying, and you help me, James. I do not want to mention this guy's name because I don't think he needs any notoriety.
Yeah,
so
don't bother.
We're just going to call him the shooter.
Mm-hmm.
But he got there where the shooter was. He laid prone. He had a direct sight to that stage, and basically he said this. He said, first of all, he said, I've been, a career with the Secret Service for 25 years. And he said, what I saw made me ashamed. And then he said these words that I think is really to the heart of the matter. He said, there is no way. He said, I cannot defend why that roof was not better secured.
Wow.
That's pretty strong, isn't it?
Right, right. And in the podcast, for those of you that are listening, you can go back and listen to the podcast. But in the podcast, Charlie mentioned the fact that he actually went, the new interim director went to the site, got on the roof, laid down in a prone position where the shooter was, and saw the line of sight.
Yeah, and
I mean,
said it made him
that's
ashamed,
that's what the
and he
previous
could not
director should have
defend it.
done. That's what the previous
Yeah,
director should have done. She didn't
exactly.
even go there.
Right, exactly. So
Wow.
I mean, there's it's not a big surprise to you or me or anybody that's listening that roof was indeed probably the greatest security breach that I've heard of in the history of the Secret Service.
Well, other than just the roof, what were some other major security breaches there on at
Well,
that
and
event?
keep in mind that what we're focusing on here is basically the very statement from the acting director. So we're getting it, as I called it in the podcast, straight from the horse's mouth,
Right, right.
And while we were looking at it, he also mentioned, you remember last week we talked about the fact that the shooter had a drone that
Yes,
he flew.
yes.
And one interesting thing he did bring about it was that one of the reasons why they could not have detected that drone was because they had some connectivity issues, that I guess their counter surveillance to check those drones, that wasn't working because of connectivity issues. But this other thing that he said that one of the ways, and you remember when you and I were talking last week, we said this has to be fixed right away. It can't wait months and months and months for some Senate committee or some committee to come up with some judgment, but it has to be fixed. So he is talking about fixing it right away. And one of the first things he said, getting back to the roof, was that from this point on, that every security plan would be vetted by not one, but several supervisors with experience to
Hmm.
make sure that all these bases are covered.
Right.
Now, the sad part about that almost leads me to think, well, if he said that, it probably means that it wasn't vetted well by those supervisors
That's certainly the
during this time.
implication. Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt about it. The second thing he said was that from this point on, that they are going to use aerial surveillance, that there will be drones that they're going to use. And just think about this, James. If there had been a drone over that place going around and around and around, they could have seen the shooter even before he climbed up there. As he was climbing, they could have caught it,
Right.
and people could have been alerted a lot quicker, and maybe this could have been stopped just by the presence of a drone.
Hmm.
Now,
Hmm.
the other thing that he mentioned, of course, was he mentioned that there's going to be greater manpower now for other events that are coming, and that is very good, because believe it or not, what I read, what in the statement even, and I read some other stuff from it. Apparently, that this is the first time in the campaign that they actually use their counter snipers. The Secret Service used their counter snipers, which is really, amazing to
Interesting.
me. Think of
Yeah.
all the places that they've been where this could have happened, and think what would have happened if they did not have those counter snipers there that day.
Right. Right.
I wonder how many other people would be dead and how many other people would be shot. So he said, we're going to have better manpower. We're going to get that. But I think one of the biggest things that he said was a security breach. And we talked about that last week, but it goes back to that communication. And it was interesting to me that when he was explaining this, he said there was communication, that there was a guy on the roof, but somehow that communication was stuck. Stuck. That's a real interesting word, isn't it?
Stuck. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's what he said. It was stuck, and he didn't really go into detail on that. But I did uh, do some research and did find this happened. The Butler County counter sniper team did observe him, and they did make a radio call to the mobile command center. Only problem was there wasn't any Secret Service people in the mobile command center.
Oh no.
And there was one guy in there. I don't think he was Secret Service, but he got the message And then he picked up the phone and tried to call somebody on the phone, but the Secret Service were actually in another area. So the Secret Service and was never ever really alerted that there was a man on the roof with a gun. Now, the local law enforcement knew there was a guy up there, but the Secret Service was never alerted. According to the director, and from everything I could see, that the only time that the Secret Service was aware that there was a guy on that roof with a gun was after the first shot. And
Wow.
And the problem was, the problem is, that should not have happened if the local law enforcement would have been able to communicate directly to the Secret Service. Because here's the big one now. They knew that there was a guy on the roof with a weapon 30 seconds before the first shot.
Right.
Now, the Secret Service, after the first shot, was able to locate that guy and take him out in 15 seconds.
Wow.
So think about that. They were able to do it in 15 seconds. Certainly, if they had known that that guy was on the roof 30 seconds, they could have taken him out before the first shot.
Exactly.
You know?
Yep.
And that right there, I think, is a total large security breach that they could not communicate directly. Local law enforcement could not communicate directly. So you see, local law enforcement were their partners. Local law enforcement did see this happen.
Right.
Local law enforcement did radio this in, but they couldn't radio to the Secret Service because that communication just was not there. And that is, and the sad part about this, we've learned this lesson all the way back from 9/11, that you've got to have communication between these agencies.
Right.
And that did not happen there,
Right. Were they all on the same channel?
Well, no, they weren't all on the same channel. Now there was a local law enforcement channel, and then the Secret Service were on another channel. But the local law enforcement should have been able, and they did. They radioed to the command, the mobile command, but there wasn't any Secret Service people there. They were in another center, another building away from there, and so it would have been just so much better that if rather than them have to relay it to command center and then there, that wastes precious seconds. And he said this in his statement. He said even seconds can mean the difference in life and death.
Right.
And he said from this day going forward, we will have communication with the local agencies that are on the ground. We will have both picture and verbal communication so that we can immediately respond to local law enforcement when they see things like this.
Well, in my many years of watching political events, that's the first time I've actually seen snipers in a roof position ever. Normally they're secluded and they're out of sight. So
yeah, that's true. As you know, like Red, what are boom or fireworks thing, and
right.
And Altamani, you and I both know that there are snipers there.
Right.
They're out of sight. Public doesn't usually see them, and a lot of these events in our country, there's counter snipers, and I believe there were counter snipers perhaps at other events. The only thing is, what we hear from here is there wasn't a Secret Service counter sniper team. I believe there were counter sniper teams that were local. Like Butler had a sniper. Butler County had a sniper team there.
Right.
And probably there are other local agencies that had a sniper team there as well. But keep in mind, it was the Secret Service sniper team that took him out, and they're probably the best of the best.
Right.
And they certainly, I think, need to be more present along with local law enforcement too, because hey, all these guys, they're extremely trained, and they have a lot of skills, and as we can see here, they stopped the threat when they realized it was a threat.
Right. What were some previous misinformation that has been put out, as we have watched this story unfold?
Well, just like we said, James, and we've said this a couple of times now. We know in all these stories, especially when you and I are dealing with these things as they happen in real time.
Hmm.
We know that there's information that comes out, and we try to share it as it comes out. We try to vet it the best we can, but we also know that as it begins to get delivered, there's going to be more and more information, and some of the information that we have heard from different sources, law enforcement, and even the media, some of it perhaps isn't correct. And so there was some misinformation that came out. The first thing that came to my mind is that I thought that the bicycle that they found belonged to him. We
Right.
find now that the bike did not belong to him, didn't have anything to do with him whatsoever. So some
Interesting.
people have been saying, that bike was parked there and maybe he was going to use that for a getaway, or maybe he was going to use that to get to his vehicle that was parked way off. No, no, bike wasn't his. The second thing was that we know now that he did not use the ladder. He did purchase a ladder, but he did not use the ladder to get on that roof. He actually climbed up on, I guess, one of the air conditioning things, and then got to a smaller roof, and then climbed to another one, that sort of thing. So he did not use the ladder. The other thing I think that's very important for us to make sure, now we never reported this, but there are some people who did report that probably one of the reasons why there was a delay is that the sniper team had to get the green to make the shot. That is not true. The sniper teams had full discretion. If they saw a threat, they had the authority to eliminate that threat. They didn't have to call and say, "Hey, do I have?" Sometimes people will see these movies and shows, and the sniper will say, "Do I have green? Do I have green? Can
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
shoot? Can I
Hmm.
shoot?" And maybe in certain situations there is. Maybe it's a hostage situation, that sort of thing. But for the most part, these sniper teams do have discretion. I mean, because again, just like we talked about, seconds
Right.
can mean the difference in life and death. And so you can't sit there and say, "Hey, I got to wait till I get permission." Particularly if you see a threat, you've got to meet that threat. Same way as a police officer. If I'm out on the street and I see something going down, I don't get on the radio and say, "Hey, yeah, can I stop this threat?"
Right.
You're trained. You have the discretion, and you have to make the shot. You have to make the call, and sometimes you have to make the shot. So it's a awesome responsibility, but it is a necessity for that person to have the discretion to take that shot.
Got it. Now, the director mentioned this new timetable that was introduced. You want to share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, we shared a timetable last week, and the one we shared last week was basically a timetable that I guess basically it said that you know it was what we got from local law enforcement.
Hmm.
And I think that was important. But this one was straight from the Secret Service themselves. Found out like 5 days before that they actually got there, and they did a walkthrough. I think a couple of days later, the sniper team got there. A couple of days before then. But when you get down to the timetable, there's a couple of things that we see that's very, very important, and that was number one, that he was seen with a rangefinder looking at that stage quite a few more minutes before they even got on the roof. And that says to me that if law enforcement and the Secret Service knew that this guy was staring at the stage with a rangefinder, and you use the rangefinder to be able to make a shot. That's what snipers use.
Right. Right.
At that point, they should have run him down, put cuffs on him, put him in the back of a car, and questioned him.
Right. Right.
But that didn't happen. So we do find in their timetable that there was plenty of time for them to do that. But the biggest thing about it is what we've already mentioned, is that we know that law enforcement knew 30 seconds before the shooting. They knew that he was on that of a gun, and I think the timetable certainly shows that there was enough time to stop that had that communication gotten to the Secret Service.
Yeah, there's video out there that actually shows local law enforcement going around the building, looking up on the roof, trying to see if they can see the shooter from their vantage point in the field. And there's even video of people that had visited the event that were actually taking picture of him on the roof.
Oh yeah, yeah. He could be seen by several people out there. But keep in mind that the snipers, the counter snipers, was not there where those people were looking up, so they probably couldn't see him at that point. But the other thing is that when you look at him up there on that roof, it's just really, really hard for us to understand that, hey, everybody else could see him there.
Right.
Everybody else knew he was up there. They were yelling. But we do know that they did, the police did kind of bring somebody up and hold him up there, and he saw him, and fell back and actually sprained his ankle trying to get up there, but he couldn't get there. So it's just really, really sad that this happened when it did not have to happen.
And what were some lessons that we learned from this whole thing?
Well, one of the things that we learned, of course, that there were major problems found, and it is really surprising to me, James. I mean, this, I've always thought, and I'm sure most people out there think this, and you think this, and probably it's very true. These guys are in my mind, should be the elite of the elite professionalism,
Right.
and to be just really, sadly to say that they were not the elite in this situation. There was major failure, and let's thank God that the former president turned his head, but let's remember somebody died,
Right.
somebody was killed.
Yep.
And the thing that is so disheartening is that it should not and did not have to happen. If the Secret Service were doing their job, if that roof had been covered, and if they had the communication, then that threat could have been stopped. So the second thing is that I do think a good lesson is that we learn by our mistakes. The country,
right?
But I still think we're the best country in the world, but we're not a perfect country, and we have learned by our mistakes. Look at our history.
Right.
We've made mistakes in the past, but the great thing about America is that America always seems to bounce back and learn from our mistakes, and we become better people for it.
Right.
And so I guess it's all of our desire that takes place for the Secret Service, right? That
That's
the
right.
Secret Service actually, will actually come to the point that they improve and they get better down the line. I think two things. I think all of us need to take a breath and say, hey, thank God they're fixing these mistakes. The second thing is, I do think that we ought to be grateful for men and women that lay their life down for others. I think that the Bible says that no greater love does a man have than to lay down his life for others. And I'm hoping that we all can understand that. And I think this would be a good time for us to talk about one of our projects, and that's the peacemakernetwork.com.
That's right.
That we have a organization, we have peacemakernetwork.com, where we honor the brave men and women of law enforcement, the brave men and women of first responders, and the military.
That's
and
right.
People can be a part of this. I hope that people will take the time to go to peacemakernetwork.com, read about some of the ways that we're helping and trying to help these brave men and women, and also become a part of the program. For as little as $3 a month, they can become a BADGE supporter. They can help us support this program, but they can also help us support those brave men and women who we call them the brave men and women who run toward danger instead of away from danger.
That's right. That's right. Peacemakernetwork.com, folks.
Yep.
Head on over there. Be a supporter. And also here on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. We really want to be able to make you aware when we drop our next episode. So just hit that subscribe button before you leave today. So thank you so much.
All right. It's really been good talking with you, James. We'll be back next week and we'll talk about the next coming podcast. And, who knows what's going to happen between now and this weekend. But right now, we're planning to get back to that Rust trial. And we're going to, again, take a run at seeing what would have happened if that trial had completed. So be sure and join us as we drop the next podcast this next weekend. So until this time next time, this is Charlie Crimebuster reminding you, stay safe, stay alert. Yep, for the life you save, it could be your very own.
You have been listening to Charlie Crimebuster. You can find additional podcasts at charliecrimebuster.com. You can also support our first responders, military, and law enforcement communities at peacemakernetwork.com. Or subscribe to our YouTube channel using tag @CharlieCrimebuster. Even visit our Facebook page, facebook.com/CharlieCrimebuster. Or if you would like to make suggestions for future podcasts, please send your ideas to charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. That's charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope that you will join us next week for another exciting crime story with Charlie Crimebuster.